So main thing we want to cover today is about how to build and maintain lists of potential customers in your market so you can be more effective at reaching out and turning leads into customers, and also maximizing revenue and customer lifetime with the customers that you already have. In researching and preparing for today, I learned a few things myself that were kind of surprising. So I'll share that with you. And then I'll hope to share or show you a couple of things in our platform as well. So just a little quick background on me. I'm the founder and CEO of Sales Nexus. And my background's in sales and sales leadership. You know, I've been hiring and firing salespeople for 25 years. I wrote a book at one point, Inside Out Selling. It's available on Amazon, which is designed, written really as a kind of a tip sheet for a sales manager that's trying to manage a digital inbound lead funnel for their sales team. So take a look at that if you're interested. And I bought a lot of contact lists in my past in all kinds of different businesses or with customers. So I've kind of seen the good, the bad, and the ugly there, and just kind of want to share with you some of the lessons learned there. Today, what we're going to cover is enriching contacts, so taking the list that you already have and making it more comprehensive and accurate. Building new prospect lists, so sourcing new leads, essentially new contacts, and then cleansing those lists for email delivery, which is really a separate thing from validating the email, which a lot of the places that you buy lists will tell you they do, but I will get into that. And at the end, we'll kind of give you sort of an overall step-by-step workflow for sourcing lists and maintaining them, and talk about next steps and how you can start to take action on this. So just some numbers here. Some of this, like I mentioned before, I didn't know myself. So poor data quality costs an estimated $12.9 million a year, according to Gartner. Companies that excel at personalization earn 40% more revenue than their peers. That's an important one, right? So in other words, if you're sending out a newsletter and it's not personalized for the recipient, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, right? And your data decays by 30% every year, meaning, if you have 900 contacts on your list, every year about 300 of them are becoming inaccurate, right? So that's pretty significant, a lot more than I would have guessed. The other thing is customers really expect personalization now, So McKinsey found that 71% expect personalization in their emails, and 76% get frustrated when there is no personalization. So that right there just tells you it's not a nice to have anymore, Let's see. Also, when it comes to cleansing, which we'll talk about later, your bounce rate will drop from 19% to less than 1%, 0.85%, when you cleanse your list. And man, if you're sending a lot of emails, that's golden. You're making a big difference there. Here's another way to look at this. When you have accurate contact data, you can achieve good open and click rates and conversion rates. Averages 45% open rate when you're sending to a nice, clean list of valid emails with no spam traps in it and all of that, right? and a 10% conversion rate is achievable, which, wow, that'd be nice. When you have inaccurate data, then you can see even your open rate goes down by 50%, more than 50%, and your conversion rate too. So when you think about whatever it is you sell and your average sale amount, whether that be $50 or $5,000, one way or the other, if you can impact these numbers in significant ways, then it's worth some money, right? And as we'll talk about later, cleansing your list, making sure it's accurate, it's not that expensive. And it definitely pays off, as you can see here. Essentially what you're doing is when you're talking about a sales team, you're not just cleaning the list for the purposes of better email delivery and conversion rates and all of those things, but it's also about your sales people, right? Either you've got a really happy sales guy who's sitting there smiling and dialing, and he's got accurate data so that he's dialing phone numbers that lead to the actual person he's trying to speak with, and he's progressing through his call list, right? And it's feels good. Or you got a frustrated sales guy because he's calling a bunch of wrong numbers, like, hello, is Bob there? And Susie's going, Bob, I don't know Bob. Who is this? Why are you calling me? Right? Nobody wants that. And that's a big waste of their time, of course. And it's just defeating. It's hard enough to get people to make those outbound calls, right? That can be a challenge by itself. To just sort of stick them in the back by giving them bad data is really not a good idea. Okay, so let's talk about enriching your list first. Again, some more numbers. 21 times more likely to convert when you have accurate data that allows you to personalize, right? That's pretty powerful. Personalization lifts revenue by 40%, based on that study we looked at earlier. And so when I talk about enriching, I'm talking about what others might call appending. So taking your list and cross-referencing it with somebody's database and appending the missing data to that list, right? Or extending it, meaning adding stuff that you haven't been tracking in the past, right? Like maybe LinkedIn profiles or additional contacts at those companies or other company related information that's not specific to the contact. Like we talked about earlier, your B2B data is decaying by around a third in some industries. So you can use enrichment tools and capabilities and techniques to fix that, right? So 40% increase in revenue or in conversion rates from accurate data that allows you to personalize. But 30% of your data is going bad every year, right? So it may not be sort of the number one fun thing to wake up and worry about every day, but it's pretty important, right? So let's get into how we do this. So first of all, let me make sure that you guys are seeing this screen. Okay. I'm going to log into Sales Nexus and just show you, for those of you that are using Sales Nexus, you already have this in your system. It's available. And I'll talk about, limits on how often you can do that and that kind of stuff, but it's there for you now. And those of you who don't have Sales Nexus already, you can start a free trial and, cleanse your list in your free trial. This is available as a part of your free trial. Now, okay, so if I go here, I've already loaded a list as an example here. So let me just find that for us. There we go, national reseller. So this is, I was working with a customer earlier this week, and we were exchanging some lists that they were having me look at. And this is I grabbed a few contacts out of their list, and you can see it's, nationwide retailers that they want to get in touch with about properties that, they could potentially lease them retail space, right? So very high value leads, but the problem is all they've got is a contact name and an email. Like maybe they signed up on their website for some free offer or something where they didn't ask them for complete contact information or something like that. But that, we don't even know their company name. We can see from the company name that it's Walmart or CarMax or whatever, or from the email, I should say. But we don't have phone numbers, addresses, social, none of that, right? But if I hit the little up button right here, what this is doing is linking up with our B2B database, and you see it found all 7 of them. And now it comes back, and now I've got that same list, but I got phone numbers, I got mobile numbers for all of them, right? I got LinkedIn profile links, addresses, Facebook links. In some cases, you'll have personal emails as well. Look at all this information now, like their title, for instance. That's pretty important when we're talking about a high ticket item. I want to make sure I'm calling the right person and I know what their role is so that I can, position what I'm selling in the right way, right? So pretty easy to do in Sales Nexus. That can be done to make sure and make this clear for those of you who are using Sales Nexus. Every user of Sales Nexus can do this for 300 contacts every month. So you can enrich, small lists of 7 or 20 people at a time, like I just did, several times a month, right? You can enrich 1 contact at a time, or you could go pull up a list of 300 contacts or 400 contacts and do it all at once. Sales Nexus will just, it'll do the first 300 on the list and leave the other 100 for next month. So that's available in your system now. For those of you who aren't using Sales Nexus, like I mentioned before, you can start a free trial and try it out. And then we can also do this for you outside of Sales Nexus as a service. We'll talk about costs and stuff like that later. You can also match on in this case, what we just did, we matched on email address. That's how we identified the contact, right? So that we could add the missing information. You can also match on their domain name, or essentially their company name, and the person's name. So that's another way to do it. Or their LinkedIn profile. That's another way. So those are some other options. A couple of just tips and tricks, whether you're doing this via Sales Nexus or some other option. You want to avoid overwriting good data. That's one of the things when we built it into Sales Nexus, we made sure if you've already put in that person's title yourself, when we connect to the B2B database and update that contact, we're not going to overwrite what you put there, because we're going to assume that what you put in there is more accurate, or more personalized, more, up to the moment, if you will. And you may want to exclude, customers you're already doing business with. You may want to only enrich leads instead of customers, as a simple way to think about it. For the same reason, when you have a customer, you're collecting information directly that you might not want to get confused and not know, okay, which of this information came from the customer and which came from the data source. It's a little confusing. So just some tips. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. All right. So moving on to building new lists. Excuse me. So there's, the basic customer profile, contact information, right? Name, phone number, title, company, address, those types of things. Then there's more kind of signals type information that you can search on. What technologies is the company using? What strategic initiatives are they, talking about in the news that your products and services might match up with? Are they hiring? Those kind of things are also ways to criterion to use to build a list, right? And you may also want to build lists from a contact database like what I'm about to show you, and then merge it with industry sources that you already have access to in your industry, right? So if I'm selling into the mortgage industry, right, and I call on mortgage brokers, there are a lot of standard information sources that most mortgage companies already subscribe to, but they may not have all the social links, or they may not have the person's mobile phone number, those types of things. So you can take that industry source and then merge it with or append it, like we talked about just now, with this type of source. So I kind of talked about the signals. I'll show you some examples of this in a minute. But if you are in recruiting and you can identify a prospect list of people that are actively hiring right now versus a prospect list of people in your industry that have employees in the role that you like to focus on. Those are two different kinds of prospects. One's a lot more valuable, right? So you can really shorten the sales cycle, improve conversions, and all of those types of things. There's a study on the G2 site about a company that generated $3.5 million in one quarter in pipeline by just focusing on people that were hiring as opposed to people in their industry. So there's a lot of data available in this B2B contact database that I'm going to show you. All their basic contact information, title, company, department, job level, when did they start their job. There's also location information, their IP address is available, and a lot of additional information. There's company data, links to the person's social media, but also the company's social media, how many employees they have, how long has the company been in business, funding events. That's another kind of trigger that you can use. And then industry sectors as well. So let me get into that and show you that piece of things real quick. Okay, yeah. So what I'm going to do is pull up a search as an example. Same basic customer I was talking about earlier, just something I was working on earlier this week. So here we go. So this is a company that a customer of ours that is looking for people in the Houston area that are in certain industries and need to lease retail space, right? So Zadig Jewelers, if you're from Houston, you probably recognize that name. If you're not, you probably don't, but they're pretty big jeweler company, and they have several locations around town and so on, and they're expanding and opening up new locations, right? Just let me show you how we got here, right? So we went in here and we said we want people at some kind of management level. Let me see if I can boost that up a little bit so you guys can see things a little better. Okay. So we're looking for people in some management role, and you can see here the different options I have, and then want people in all of these different industries. We went through and manually just chose the ones that they designated as the industries they care about. You can be a little more broad if you want to. And then we put in some locations. I put in, this is just one zip code, but another way to do this, and this is kind of a powerful tool in this system, is I can import a list of zip codes to search against, which is often in a metropolitan area. You're not wanting to just get one city, but you may be kind of on the west side of town and not so focused on the right or on the east side of town. So you want to designate those zip codes and upload that list, and then the system will limit the search based on those criteria. And then you can also add in more specific things: gender, education. That can be a nice one that I've used in a lot of different ways. It can be kind of a proxy for certain things. I've worked with some customers that are wanting to target people for fundraising for different political or nonprofit type causes that they're raising for, and so they might want to target people that went to different universities, right? You can target them by age, their skills. So like if you're in the medical industry and you want to target nurses or something like that, you could put in the different certifications that nurses have to have, and filter the system based on that. Interest, same thing. Maybe I'm putting together a magazine on sailing or something like that, and I want to find people that are interested in sailing, right? While I'm talking about that, just to be clear, the way that all this is being put together, the data set, is based on what people put in their LinkedIn profile. So the way to think about this is, if they're on LinkedIn, then we have their information here. If they are into sailing, but they don't ever put that on LinkedIn, then they may not come back here as somebody interested in sailing. If that makes sense. You can search by their former employer, all kinds of other things, including their cell phone, which is pretty valuable. And the good news is these cell phone numbers are very accurate. I've actually called them myself, and I can tell you stories about, I called one time trying to help a customer get a campaign kind of optimized. I made some calls for them, and I made 5 calls, and one of them was the global CFO of CBRE Real Estate. I just called his cell phone and he picked up the phone. Pretty valuable. Let's see. Yeah, I won't bore you with the other stuff here. If you put in your criteria, you hit search, you get back the results here, and you can go in and cherry pick the list if you want and say, okay, I want those guys and that guy and that girl, and then just export that list of selected people, or kind of add them to my leads, meaning, I'm kind of setting them aside. Now I'm going to go do some other searches and grab 5 or 10 people at a time and just slowly but surely build up a list. And then ultimately I export the list and I, send it out to a CSV file. So whether you're a Sales Nexus client or not, you can use this tool, download the CSV, and pump it into whatever system you're using, your CRM, your email marketing solution, or whatever else you're using. These are just different lists that I have downloaded before, so I'm just going to grab one of them And just pull that up so you can see the output that the system gives you. So there's that spreadsheet. And it's a lot of data. So it's, not just the basic stuff that we've talked about, their title and their email, but it's there. A lot of them, we got personal emails. We got their mobile number. Here's all the skills that they put into their LinkedIn profile, right? So these are all keywords that you can search against to narrow down your list. And then there's a lot of information about the company itself. Their education. You're getting all of that data that we're using as criterias in the user interface are coming out in this file that you can now use to slice and dice on your own. So I don't want to overwhelm everybody with all of that information. Suffice to say, it's a lot. Now let me go back here and pull up that same. I'll pull up a different search. Here's emergency nurses based on skills, right? And I'll show you over here. Here's how we got that list right there. That CEN is the acronym for the certification that an emergency nurse has to have, right? And then up here, we didn't filter it by, seniority level or anything like that, but we could, if we only want to talk to the managers, then we could filter it in that way. Or if there's a specific title that you want to target, you can do it that way. But here's the results. And one thing to note over here, see over here, it says last updated. You can see all of it is very recent, within the last 30 days or so. And that's basically the cycle. What's happening is, and this is how this data is kept accurate. Once every 30 days, the system is pinging that contact's LinkedIn profile to see if it's changed since last time. And if there's been any change, then they re-scan that LinkedIn profile. And sometimes that'll trigger they changed from one company to another. We're going to need to change, update everything about that contact. Sometimes it's just, they added a new skill. Okay, well, let's add that to the database. But one way or the other, every month it's getting scanned and updated. And so that's why we use this platform, because we found it to be the most accurate, especially when it comes to the email addresses, which is crucial for our customers, but also, as I mentioned earlier, the phone numbers as well. Like I said earlier, I've used everybody in the past, and in my experience, this platform is the most accurate because it works the way I just described with the automatic updating. A lot of these guys, they do what they do to accumulate the data, but then it sits there on their system. And just like we talked about before, their data is decaying by 30% every year, right? So if they're not maintaining that in some proactive way, then when you buy your list, you're getting a lot of bad data. Let's see. Anybody have any questions about that, how that works? If anybody has a specific sort of list that you're trying to source, I can walk you through that, just kind of show everybody an example. I'll pull up here a couple of other searches that I've just saved here, and you can see how you can save your searches and all of that, so you can come back to them. Like here's one, just searching for property managers that are at some kind of a high level in the organization, and I want to have their cell phone, right? So there's 129 people. in the location area that we chose, and I can download that list and go to town, right? So you can download this list, pump it into Sales Nexus or any other system that you're using. One particular thing you can do in Sales Nexus is you can merge this with your existing list, right? So Sales Nexus will match on the email address and just update those existing contacts with this new information rather than creating a bunch of duplicate contacts and stuff. And then outside of Sales Nexus, we have this appending capability that I wanted to be sure and show everybody. Essentially, you can take your list, leads, customers, whatever, and upload it in here. And then what the system does is, number one, it comes back with this analysis for you, which can be really valuable. So it breaks down your whole list based on, what titles do these people have, and which ones are the most prevalent, what size companies are they within, and what industries are they in. All of these little pieces of data, but what's really powerful is right here. I can say find lookalike contacts. So essentially what's happening is the system is taking your list, building a profile of that list, and then here you can click that button and the system will come back and say, hey, here's another 1,000 contacts that we found that fit the same exact profile. Would you like to download those too? So that can be a really powerful way to add to your list, right? But it can also be used just like we looked at earlier with the enrichment, right, that we did in Sales Nexus. Here's a list that a customer had that we loaded into the B2B contact database and did the append. And here you can see all we had was the names and emails. But then the output that comes out of the append is all of this additional information. So now instead of just names and emails, I got phone numbers, addresses, company information, social profiles, all of that stuff, right? So you can do that outside of Sales Nexus for a much larger list is where that's mostly used, for thousands of contacts at a time. Okay, anybody have any questions about that? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, guys. I just realized y'all weren't seeing that last little piece. Here we go. There's that. Just back up. Here's the before, here's what we had, names and emails. And then here's the after. Here's what came out of the system after we did the append. All this additional information for those same contacts. Okay. Let me go back to my slides. There we go. So let's talk about cleansing. So first of all, if you're doing a lot of emailing, then this is just money in the bank. It's very affordable. And it's going to improve your delivery rates, your inboxing, your engagement rates, all of that. It just is. It's not just identifying, or removing inaccurate emails from your list. It's also removing what's called spam traps. And both of these things keep you out of the spam folder, the junk folder, right? And then you also want to make sure that you're complying with all the Gmail and Yahoo and Outlook validation stuff. They keep changing that. It's you got to keep up to date on that. We do that for you if you're a Sales Nexus customer, but it is something to pay attention to. What I mean by that is DKIM and SPF and DMARC and all that stuff. So let's just talk about what is a spam trap. Whoops, sorry. Here we go. A spam trap is this weird mystery. That's why I don't have anything on the screen. It's the whole idea is they don't want you to know what a spam trap is or how to identify one, because that defeats their purpose. The purpose is to allow email receivers, Outlook, Gmail, Yahoo, but also just big corporate mail servers, to identify spam, right? And there's several techniques that they'll use, but a couple of relatively simple examples are old emails. So in the case of Gmail, a lot of people start free Gmail accounts and then never use them, right? So after a period of time, what Gmail will do, those dormant accounts, they'll start placing that email address into different lists that are available on the internet. And that way, when somebody sends an email to that dormant Gmail address, then they know, you're sending to a kind of unengaged, spammy list, if you will, right? Another way they do it is sometimes they are real people with a real job, a real corporate email address that is just part of some service where every time they mark your email as spam in their system, in their email inbox, this service sees that signal and then broadcasts it to Gmail and Outlook and everybody else, right? So, long story short, this cleansing process will identify those and take them off your list, so you're not going to send to them. There's a whole bunch of other scenarios, but they're sort of more hard to even understand, much less explain and find. But how this works is in Sales Nexus. Let's see here. Get back to the system. I can go to any list in Sales Nexus, so let's go back to our, where was it? National retailers. There we go. Could be a list of 7 people like I have here, or it could be, 7,000. Right here, I click on the cleanse email button, and you can either purchase the cleanse through Sales Nexus, or you can have your own account with email oversight. That's the vendor we use. It's actually, unless you're a really high volume cleanser, it's cheaper to buy it through Sales Nexus. It's going to cost you 4 cents per email. You don't need to do it more than once per email, right? You only do it once. So the best practice is when you're loading a list into Sales Nexus, regardless of the source, just go ahead and cleanse it and be done with it, because there's no way that you're going to know if it has spam traps on it. Believe me, they sneak into all kinds of lists, including, the list of licensed financial brokers from the SEC, or, approved brokers from, the National Wholesale or National Mortgage Association, or whatever, very sort of reputable trade industry associations. There's spam traps and bad emails on those lists for sure. So you just go here, you say purchase through Sales Nexus, and it's going to tell you what it's going to cost. 7 times 4 is 28 cents. So I proceed with that. I'm actually in my demo account, so it's not going to do it. But it just does it, and it'll send you an email and let you know when it's done. And what happens is it doesn't remove the contacts from your database. It just marks the emails as what we call do not send. And then also it updates a field so that you can analyze the specifics, so you can look at this email validation result field in the contact record, and you'll be able to see, why were they marked as do not send? Was it a spam trap, or it's an invalid email? Because, you might want to take the invalid emails and, call those people up, right? And say, hey, looks like we got a bad email for you. What's the new email, right? So that's how the cleansing works. Anybody have any questions about that? Let's see. Let me go back to the slides. So here's kind of an overall workflow, just as an example. Your frequency and some of the details may be different depending, if you're acquiring a lot of new data, then you need to be better at this, right? If you're not acquiring a lot of new data, if you're mostly sending to the same list of people over and over and over again over months and years, then you probably need to cleanse your list that you have now, and then once a quarter, maybe a couple times a year, take the new ones that you've added and cleanse those, and that's probably going to cover you, right? So it kind of depends on your situation, but as an example, every week you can go in and search for people that are, have the signals that you look for, right? People hiring in your industry, people that had a new funding event, whatever that is. Every month, you might go in and say, show me all the leads that we've qualified. Maybe not all the leads. Maybe you don't want to use up all your credits on all of them, but your, sort of high value leads. Let's go and enrich those contacts, right? And then once a quarter, go and do kind of a hygiene exercise, right? Also check your DMARC and your DKIM and your SPF and all that validation stuff. Because sometimes when people are in there messing around with your website, they break stuff, and also Google and Outlook keep changing the rules. So you just got to double check that every few months. Yeah, you're enriching, you're building new, you're cleansing, and then you're sending out your emails. You're executing on your telephone campaigns, and you're measuring the results. And you will see that if you have clean data, you will see better results. Let's see, since we kind of have a little bit of extra time, what I'm going to do, I'm happy to address any questions that anybody has. I got to find the right window here. Well, how did I lose that? Okay, well, let's just go back in there the hard way. I want to go back to that signals concept because this is pretty powerful. This is how you can search for prospects based on the technology that they're using in their company, based on their hiring, based on funding events, or other sort of company news and things that might be relevant to your business. So I go in here to alerts, and I have all these different alert types that I can choose from. Legal issues, maybe that's something that is important for you, right? If somebody's getting sued, or there's, different things percolating through the courts related to that company, and you want to know about it, right? Partnerships and joint ventures, mergers and acquisitions, awards, funding. These are all things that, depending on the business you're in, could be really good indicators of a hot prospect, right? Let's just do personnel, because that's pretty straightforward to understand. And we'll say, people hiring in, the last week, and I'm looking for people hiring engineers, right? And I could narrow it down by company and other factors, right? Location, etc. So here we go. So I got all these names of people that just got hired, right? So that may be valuable by itself, or just the fact that the company is hiring, right? So I could say right here, I want to target these companies, right? Because I know they're hiring. I could target all 5,000 of them. I'll just choose a few. And I say, actually, let me go back here, and I'm going to say, let's limit this to the United States, so we don't have everybody hiring all over the world. But you could target other companies or countries. Wait, that can't be right. Let me just turn that off, just so I can show you guys how it works without getting stuck on the details. So these companies are hiring people. So if I go here and say find companies with these for these alerts, or find contacts. So if I want to figure out who to call at these companies, I say find contacts at those companies. And now I'm looking at all kinds of people at those companies. Now I can start to narrow it down and say, I want people with engineering in their title, and people at the VP level, right? So now I'm looking at, I went from 680,000 people to 1,200 people that are VP of engineering, essentially, at companies that are hiring engineers, right? So now I'm getting a pretty actionable list if I'm in the, engineering business, right? When I go to export this list, one other trick, because you can see that all these people are at Microsoft, right? So I could go here, export, download, and say, I only want, maximum of 5 or 10 people at each company. So I don't just get nothing but Microsoft contacts, or I can also remove Microsoft from the list. So that's one way you can do this. Another way is to go to company, and you can search for technologies. So that can be cool. Like, we use that a lot. As an example, let's say that you're in the accounting business and you want to find people that are using QuickBooks, right? So I now can search for companies using QuickBooks, and then do the same thing, select all those companies, find contacts at these companies. Like in this case, let's say I'm an accounting firm, and I exclusively work with folks that are using QuickBooks, right? Well, I might want to narrow this down to people in my area, and maybe also, I don't want to waste my time with super big companies, because they're not, they're going to have in-house people, right? So I'm going to limit it down to companies with 1,000 employees in Texas. So now I'm down to 1,400 companies. Find contacts at these companies. And it's crunching on that. There we go. Now I got 211,000 people. But again, I probably want to come in here and say, I want to talk to the people with financial in their title, and their job level is C level or VP, right? So now I got 513 people at companies that work or that have QuickBooks, and I got all their CFOs basically. Man, that's pretty actionable if I'm a CPA, right? So I download that list, I pump it into Sales Nexus, and get after them. Okay, well, we're getting pretty close to the top of the hour here. Anybody have any questions or anything?
Yeah, Craig, this is Bud. Can I ask you a couple of quick questions?
Yes, sir.
If you go back to that program you were in a minute ago, the ramped up one.
Okay, yep. Let me get back there. I will try anyway.
Now, if you scroll down to the bottom, I'm just trying to sanity check this with you. You'll notice that there's a checkbox towards the bottom of near where your cursor is. If you go up right where you are there, it says import to Salesforce's context. I think for the benefit of the group here, that means that they probably have some kind of an import map that they've got built in that allows you to easily move these records into Salesforce. My question is, can you develop an import map yourself for your Sales Nexus application, so that when you do this, you can apply an import map and not have to do it over and over again each time?
Yeah, well, two things. So yes, we're working on just making it like push button, like they have it here for Salesforce, right? Mm-hmm. So that's coming in our new version that we're working on. But in the meantime, it's not too bad. What you do is you export that CSV, but then when you import the contacts into Sales Nexus, you go here, contacts, import, load your CSV. Let me try to find one that I recently did, but there's a saved mapping in Sales Nexus.
Okay, so you can build a map on the other side.
That's right.
And then bring it in. Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay, all right, that's good.
Yeah, and that's built into your account in Sales Nexus. Once you get to this step where you've uploaded your CSV, you will see when my screen refreshes here that right here, you see the mappings. Right. One of them in there is ramped up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what you could do is you could have a sourced field in your Sales Nexus program where you put in the source of where the data came from on the import.
In fact, it will do that by default. It'll make the lead source equal to ramped up.
Okay, and then my last question is, in ramped up, when you're just in Sales Nexus itself and you say, okay, I want to check this to see if there's any new data, and you click on the green up arrow on it.
Right.
If you were to do one, okay, I understand that. If you were to do, you said earlier, you have 300 credits. So if you just did a list of 400, it's going to do the 300 and it's not going to do the other 100. Is there some kind of a tag mechanism in place where you know who you did and who you didn't do?
Yeah, there is. It's a great question. It's probably not the kind of thing that is going to jump out at anybody, but once you know kind of thing. There's a field called RUID. That's the ramped up ID.
Okay.
So you can see that one's populated because this is one of the ones we enriched earlier. If it's blank,
okay. So anyone that's updated will have that field. There'll be data in that field.
Yeah, it'll be not blank. That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So to complete that example, you can go and do a lookup and say RUID blank, right? And that gives you all there's my 2,300 people that I have not enriched yet.
Perfect. Right? Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. Okay, let me go back to my slides and just want to make sure everybody knows, kind of the pricing options that are available. So again, in your Sales Nexus subscription, you can do the enrichment like we were just doing. based on Bud's question, for free, for no additional cost, 300 times every month per user. So if you have 10 users in your Sales Nexus account, that means you can do it 3,000 times. If you want to do it beyond that, or you want to download new lists from the system, or do the append, all the things that are outside of Sales Nexus that we looked at here, then there's costs, and you can see what those are here. You can buy lists, on a one-off basis, and that starts at 50 cents per contact, for small lists, and then it'll go down. If you're getting 10,000 contacts at a time, it'll be closer to, 35 cents or so per contact. And that includes all of that data that we looked at in the spreadsheet earlier. Or you can do a subscription where you just get some more credits to download more contacts every month. So you're not getting thousands at a time. You're just getting another 1,000 credits a month. So you just kind of keep using it on an ongoing basis. And you can see those prices here. For the subscriptions, it does require a 6-month commitment. So we'll just auto bill your credit card for these amounts. And then when you log on to the portal to do the searching, you'll have your own log on to do the kind of searching that we've been doing here. And you'll just see your number of credits will be increased every month automatically. Now, since you're in the webinar, we're offering 3 times the contacts. So you can take these numbers and multiply them by 3 and take advantage of these same prices. So for $200 a month, instead of getting 450 contacts a month, you're getting 1,350 contacts. Or for $400 a month, you're getting 3,000 contacts a month. So that's available till the 22nd, so next Friday. So if you're interested in taking advantage of that, you can reach out to me. There's my email. Or if you want to talk a little more about all the capabilities and your requirements, your needs, you can book a call with me here. I'll put that in the chat right now so you guys can get it easily. And also, for the email validation that we kind of touched on, the DMARC and the DKIM and SPF and all that, if you haven't already addressed that, you need to, for sure. If you're sending emails, it's becoming more and more important all the time. We've created a guide, which I'm putting a link to here in the chat, to help you understand what it is, how does it get done, how do you maintain it, all the little details. So take a look at that. We're happy to help you. If you're a Sales Nexus customer, we're happy to help you get it set up. You can do a lot of it, or at least start the process within Sales Nexus, and then our team will help you tweak it if needed. Okay, well, I appreciate everybody being here today, and we'll be sending out the recording probably tomorrow. And if there's any questions or anything I can do to help you, feel free to reach out. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Craig.
Have a great afternoon.